You know that feeling when you walk into a space and it just hits you? Maybe it's a sense of awe or calm or even a little bit of intimidation. What is it about certain buildings that can make us feel so much? Well, today, we're going to dive into those unspoken ideas that are literally built into architecture. We'll be using Simon Unwin's amazing analysis of 25 buildings to decode how they express some really profound thoughts using just form, space, and light. You know, the philosopher Wittgenstein totally nailed it here. Great architecture isn't just about putting a roof over your head. It speaks to you. It says something so fundamental that you can't help but react. It's a reminder that architecture is basically a language. So, what's it trying to say? What's the very first, most basic thought it's trying to get across? Before you even think about style or concrete or glass, what is the most primary, the most fundamental idea that architecture has to communicate? It all starts right here with the simple but honestly revolutionary act of creating a place. It's about carving out a small piece of the world just for us, for human life, and making a little sanctuary from all the chaos out there. Just picture yourself out in the middle of nowhere. It's wild, it's undefined, you feel kind of exposed, right? There's no point of reference. Well, that's where architecture steps in. Its very first job is to fix that feeling by creating what we call a datum, a specific, defined place that we can relate to. I mean, just by leveling the ground, you're creating a stage for human life to unfold on. It's a place where we can stand and move and live with a bit of certainty. And in its own way, that simple platform becomes a kind of temple, a space dedicated purely to human presence in the middle of this vast, vast world. Okay, so we've made a place. Now we've got to think about who's actually in it. And as any architect will tell you, figuring out who the person is inside a building, well, it's way more complex than it sounds. Because it's not just about their physical body, it's about their whole emotional and psychological world. I mean, just think about the words we use. User sounds so cold, so technical, like you're operating a machine. Inhabitant is really just for a home. Visitor feels too temporary. Unwin suggests we just say the person. And it makes sense because a person doesn't just use a building, they experience it. They see it, hear it, touch it. They're shaped by it. The words we pick really do matter. And that brings us to this absolutely crucial point. Buildings aren't passive shells, they're active frameworks. They actually give shape and meaning to the lives that are lived inside them. They don't just contain life, they frame it. So if buildings are frames for our lives, how do they relate to the world outside the frame? This conversation, this dialogue with nature, is honestly one of the most fascinating themes in all of architecture. One of the key ideas here is something called prospect and refuge theory. It taps into something really primal in us. The idea is that deep down, our brains are still wired for survival. We are instinctively drawn to spaces that give us both safety, that's the refuge, and a big, wide open view of what's coming, that's the prospect. And this building is just a brilliant example of that theory in action. Koolhaas's design gives you this deep sense of security, of being enclosed, while at the very same time empowering you with this incredible, liberating view. It's the perfect blend of safety and freedom. And this leads to two completely different ways of thinking about that relationship with nature. On one hand, you've got someone like Lloyd Wright with Falling Water, who basically weaves the house into the landscape. It's a collaboration. But then you have Mies van der Rohe's Farnsworth house, which stands apart. It's like a perfect object placed in the landscape, starting a conversation. Neither one is right or wrong. They just express two profoundly different ideas about where we fit in the world. Okay, so if architecture is a language that expresses all these big ideas, then just like any language, it's got to have a grammar, right? A set of rules and elements that architects use, whether they know it or not, to create meaning. Let's start with something we think is super simple, the wall. But here's a wild idea. Stop thinking of a wall as a noun, a thing. Think of it as a verb. A wall acts. It directs you, it separates spaces, it hides, and it reveals. It's an active tool for choreographing your entire experience of a space. Now, this is where a huge debate in architecture comes from, this tension in form. On one side, you've got this ancient tradition from guys like Alberti, who believe that beauty comes from ideal geometry, the pure perfection of squares and circles. But on the other side, you've got architects who love the architectural squiggle, these organic, flowing forms that create a totally different kind of energy. And the Truss Wall House is the perfect example of that squiggle. It's this incredible, fluid, living form just dropped right into the middle of a rigid rectangular suburb. It's doing it on purpose, right? It's challenging the boring grid and saying, hey, what if we lived in a more fluid way? And man, this whole debate just exploded in the 20th century. You had the super minimal, less is more philosophy from modernists like Mies, and then Robert Venturi comes along and just throws down the gauntlet with this legendary comeback. Less is a bore. It was a call to arms, really, to embrace complexity, messiness, and even history instead of just stripping everything away. Okay, so this is where architecture gets really, really cool. At its highest level, it moves beyond just being useful. It becomes a powerful metaphor, able to tell complex stories and make us feel deep emotions, all without saying a single word. Just take a really close look at the floor in this church. Notice anything weird? It's not flat. The bricks are all rough and uneven, and the whole floor kind of swells and dips. Why on earth would an architect do that? Well, the answer is just pure poetry. The key to understanding it comes from this critic, George Edmund Street. He was writing about a similar floor in Venice, and he gave us the perfect image for it. The floor is like petrified waves. And as soon as you hear that, the whole building just clicks into place. It's the ship of the church. It's a safe vessel that's going to protect its congregation as they sail through the stormy, choppy seas of life. I mean, come on, that's architecture as poetry. But here's what's so cool about metaphors. They're flexible. The Villa E1027 also feels like a ship. But notice how the feeling is completely different. This is not a ship of refuge. This is a glamorous ocean liner, all about travel, romance, escape. So you've got the same basic idea, a ship, used to express two totally different thoughts. And that leads us to one of the biggest and maybe one of the most humbling questions for any architect. The designers of the Sea Ranch condominium, their goal was, and I quote, to make a community. But in the end, the market wanted individual villas, and that social dream kind of just faded away. It forces you to ask a really tough question. What are the actual limits of an architect's power? So, we end up right back where we started. Architecture expresses thought. It frames life. The ultimate lesson from all these incredible buildings isn't about one style or one technique. It's a direct challenge. As a designer, as a creator, every single line you draw, every space you make is framing a human experience. So the only question left is, what kind of life, what kind of experience are you going to frame?